Jag säger varmt välkommen till det här webbinariet som också är ett poddavsnitt i podden som gör dig glad. Vi spelar ju in alla sådana här avsnitt live och sedan så kommer de ju ut som poddavsnitt också. Fördelen ska jag säga med att vara med live, det är ju att vi kommer ju kunna svara på dina frågor i slutet. Så dels får du en liveupplevelse och dels får du svar på dina frågor. Bättre än så kan det inte vara. Och podden som gör dig glad, det vet du säkert redan, men det är ju stället där du får inspirationen, motivationen och de nya kunskaperna och där vi inte ens andas om dåliga nyheter. Det får du söka dig till andra medier. Vi är positiva för vi vill att du ska lyckas. Det är vårt mål. Jag heter Max Söderpalm. Jag är författare, säljtränare och grundare av iZonen. Och vad är iZonen då? Jo, det är där som man tränar sälj 24 timmar om dygnet. Det är där man kan hela tiden få träffa oss för att bli bäst helt enkelt. Söderpalm Publishing, som jag driver också, är Sveriges coolaste affärsförlag. Vi siktar på att det ska vara enkelt och kul att läsa affärsböcker så att du kan utveckla dig. Och podden som gör dig glad, den hittar du precis överallt där poddar finns. Den brukar komma ut först på YouTube. Och så här kommer det gå till idag, innan jag släpper in Bruce, att vi kommer ha ett antal inspirerande framgångspunkter och idag fokuserar vi ju på att ge dig våra bästa avslutstips. Och sen när vi är klara med det så kommer vi att svara på dina frågor som du skriver in till oss. Och det är helt okej att skriva in frågor under hela sändningen. Men det kan mycket väl bli så att vi tar dem, samlar ihop dem och tar dem på slutet. Och nu måste jag säga så här, jag är jätteglad att få presentera och hälsa välkommen igen till podden som gör dig glad. Mr. Bruce King. Are you there?
I certainly am, Max. Good morning. Good afternoon.
Morning. How is everything in UK at the moment?
Everything in UK is, it's a state of mind. Either you put up with it or you don't put up with it. It's not an easy country at the moment, thank you.
No, but you are standing strong, aren't you?
Yes, indeed.
Yes, perfect.
You stand tall.
Yes. Today we are going to speak a lot about closing the sales. But before we do that, the listeners learn a little more about you. For example, you have been in sales for a long time. When did you start your sales career?
I started my sales career when I was still at junior school, and I had an uncle who sold toiletries wholesale, and he gave me stuff to take to school, and I sold it to the teachers and the kitchen staff.
Okay, and did you like that, or was it hard?
It was great. I made money.
Yes, perfect. And when you then later start to work as a salesman, what industry was that?
Well, my very first job was a part-time sales job. It was a Saturday job, in fact, and I also worked in the school holidays, and that was in a gents tailoring store. And I was hired to make the tea and coffee and to sweep up, but when it got busy, I jumped in and started selling, and I was better than most of the professional sales guys there. I've always had this thing, Max. You know, people don't like the word sales or salespeople, but I never considered myself in sales. I never have. I help people. I help people solve their problems. I help people exploit opportunities, many of which they don't know about, either the problems or the opportunities. And I just help people to get what they want and what they need. I help buy by closing the sale.
Yeah. How was that in the clothing store? How did you help them there?
I advised them on what I thought would look great on them. I was only 13 years old at the time, but I looked a lot older, and I lied about my age to get the job. But people trusted me. I wasn't pushy. I just showed them stuff.
Okay.
And got them on and flattered them.
Yes. Perfect. And when you started your first proper sales job, full time, where was that?
That was, well, I had a lot of roles when I was involved in selling, but it was not really selling. I had 3 drugstores, chemists, non-dispensing chemists, which I owned, and I was wandering around the shops selling stuff to people. My first proper sales job, full-time, nothing but sales, was in financial services. And I was the #1 salesman after just 1 year in a sales force of over 2,500 people. And I did really well.
Yeah, so that's a good start if you want to be a sales guru, to make it on your own. And the best of 2,500, that's good. That's not the 74%. So how's the market in the UK at the moment? Is it easy or is it hard to sell?
If you're good at selling, and remember 74% of salespeople suck, so they're going to find it real hard. But if you're in the 26%, it's still pretty easy. So we're here to help people solve problems, some of which they never knew they had, and to help them exploit opportunities they maybe never knew existed. And it's easy. Here in Sweden, we hear a lot about the English economy. Okay, the Swedish economy isn't the best either, but a lot of people talk about and think about it's bad in the UK at the moment. So, but it's still possible to sell. The economy is awful, but there's still an awful lot of people who've got disposable income. And there's a lot of people who've got problems and are prepared to invest their money to solve those problems or to exploit opportunities. That's the same everywhere, Max, in every country. Of course it is. But then you could say that if you think it's hard to sell, maybe it becomes hard to sell. Absolutely. You know, I think it was Henry Ford said there's 2 types of people in the world, those who think they can and those who think they can't, and they're both right. If you think it's hard, it's going to be hard. And if you think it's easy, it's going to be a lot easier. Okay, but and then let's talk about this closing process. A lot of people have big problems just to ask that little question. Why is that? I think the #1 reason is that they fear rejection. They don't like people saying no to them, so they try to avoid it. And, you know, I still, from time to time, I work with some companies coaching their salespeople, and it's amazing how often people freeze when it comes to when they should be closing. And very often they don't even ask for the business. They wait for the customer or the client to volunteer to purchase. And they're not going to do it. They don't do it. It's fear of rejection. That is the main challenge. Or they just don't know how, or they don't know how to. No, because you can learn this, and that's why we have this topic today. Just before we start the closing
advices we have. A little reminder that a couple of years ago, you and me, we wrote the book 74% of all salesmen suck. And in Sweden, av alla säljare suger. Why do you think 74% of all the salespeople suck?
I believe the main reason is they've never been trained or coached to sell properly. So many times when companies are interviewing people for a sales position, they don't ask them many questions. They assume that if they are salespeople, they can sell, and they don't give them any training or insufficient training. And unfortunately, 74% of salespeople can't sell.
Yeah, and then you usually say that that's good for us.
Absolutely. If you're in the 26% of salespeople who don't suck, you haven't got very much competition, have you?
No, you haven't. Absolutely, and that's the reason we wrote this book, because a lot of things pointed at just the number of 74%, that there was the difference between suck or not suck. So that's why we wrote that book. And now it's time for the main topic of the webinar. We will give you 7 of our best closing strategies for double your sales. We're going to go for that, Bruce.
Okay.
Yes. Let's start with number 1 here.
Yes.
That's one of your advices. Closing sales comes at the end, but the end can be right at the start. How do you mean, Bruce?
Okay. I mean, closing the sale obviously comes at the end of everything else you've done in your sales process, and you must have a process, an agenda, if you like, how you start, how you move through your process, and finally asking for the business or the order, the close. In almost every case, the time I've taken them through my sales process, and by the time you've taken them through yours, they should understand what amazing value you offer, how trustworthy you are and great to deal with, and be biting your hand off to get their hands on what you have to offer them. But, and it's a big but, you could start with a close. The reason is that all recent research shows that 90% of the buying decision nowadays has been made before they ever get to speak with you or meet with you. They'll have checked you out online, checked out your competitors, and they're probably almost ready to buy. So I'll often ask a simple question right at the very beginning. Have you asked me in today, or asked me to call you today to place an order with me? Silent close. Sometimes they'll say yes and place an order with me. Often they'll say, hold on a minute, Bruce, I do have a couple of questions to ask you first. And that's great, because now I only have a couple of questions to answer, and I don't have to take them through my whole sales process. I mean, how easy is that?
What is the worst case scenario? What's the worst thing that can happen if you ask a closing question in the start of the sale?
Do you know, most of the time that works for me. I use that close nowadays, I would say probably 90% of the time. On the odd occasion, somebody will say to me, well, hold on, I've got a lot of questions, so let's start at the beginning. And they'll ask me a question. And then it just goes through. I still lead the sales process. I still take them through my agenda, my sales process. I just turn it around and do what I would normally do, or would otherwise do. One more thing to that, if I may, please.
Do that.
This applies to everything. Use their name. Use their name frequently. So often I'll say, have you asked me today, Max, to place an order with me? It makes it personal. It involves them when you use their name.
That's a good tip. Perfect. Let's go to the next one. Turning a question into a sale. What's that?
It's a very powerful closing technique, and there's usually frequent opportunities to use it during a sales presentation. But unfortunately, most salespeople walk right past these opportunities. Let me give you a couple of examples. Let's say you're in your sales process, you're selling something, and they say, does it come in red? And so often the salesperson will say yes and wait for them to speak. But that's not the way to deal with it. If somebody says, does it come in red? You say, would you like it in red? And when they say yes, you have a sale. They could say something like, could I pay for this monthly? You don't say yes. You say, would you like to pay for it monthly? If they say yes, they bought it. And there are so many other questions they might ask that you can turn into a close. It's so simple.
Does that work for bigger stuff as well, do you think? Or is it just for the sofa or the dress or the phone? Or could you use that if you're business to business and sell expensive stuff?
Well, my coaching is very expensive. My sales training is very expensive. My speaking fees are very high indeed. Nevertheless, when they ask me a question like, would you be available in May? It's, would you like to book me for May?
Perfect. Absolutely perfect. It's so easy. Just turn the statement around and add a question mark.
Yeah.
Perfect.
It's so easy.
Vad säger ni som lyssnar? De här 2 första tipsen, är det något som går att använda i Sverige också? Skriv hemskt gärna in till oss. Ni skriver under questions i plattformen, för vi vill hemskt gärna höra vad ni tycker. Är det här något ni använder eller är det här något som fungerar? Så ska vi gå vidare med resten av avsluten här. And here's one of my closes, and I really like this because it saves a lot of time when you book your sales calls, your meetings, your Teams meetings, or whatever. I have a golden rule. When I book, I always give 2 options. Because if I ask, are you available on Thursday? No. Are you available on Saturday? No. What's best, Thursday or Friday? In Sweden we call this tvåvägsavslutet, and the two-way close in English. And a lot of people think this is too easy to be true. But think like this. If you book maybe 1,000, 2,000 different bookings a year, with internal meeting, external meeting, customer meeting, then if you can do that smooth, if you can do that easy, you can fill your agenda when you want it to be filled. So have you tried that, the two-way close when you book meetings, Bruce?
Absolutely. It's the most obvious thing to do. I didn't understand what you said in Swedish, but absolutely always give 2 options. And it's not only when it comes to booking a meeting, it could be during your sales process. Let's say you're selling something simple like photocopier paper or washing powder or anything where there is an option to get a discount if you buy in bulk. So you give 2 options. Would you like 20 cases or would you like 200 cases with a 20% discount?
The thing with this close is that if you use that, your customer likes you. They think you are easy to to play with. And yeah, this is one of the most time effective things I have found during 30 years in sales. So do that if you want to save time and get happy customers. Now it's your turn again, Bruce. The secondary question close. What's that?
Okay, you use this close when you're reasonably certain that your prospect is willing to accept your proposition, but you're not certain, but you want to put it to bed quickly. And the most important thing is you want to make it as easy as possible for them to go ahead. So the technique is based on posing the major buying question first, and then immediately bypassing it with another question of far lesser importance, which is much easier for them to make a decision on than the main purchase. So, for example, let's say I say, I think we've covered everything now, Mr. Prospect. We just need to complete the order form. By the way, will you be arranging your own insurance, or would you like us to arrange this for you? And they may say something like, I'll be arranging my own insurance, thank you. They've balked. They've made a decision on something minor. I could say something like, from what we've discussed so far, Mr. Prospect, I think the computer with 1,000 terabytes is going to be the most suitable for you. Would you prefer it in black or silver? If they say, I would prefer black or I prefer silver, they bought it. It just makes it so much easier because they're thinking about the secondary question and not thinking about the major purchase. For example, I could say, from what we've discussed, the Bahamas seems to be the ideal holiday for you and your family. When would you like to book it for?
Yeah, and then you can say April or May, and then you have a two-way close at the end. This is also good because you take away the drama of the yes or no.
Yes.
Because it's April or May or 1,000 terabyte or 2,000 terabyte. It's another thing. Perfect. Brilliant. Okay, my turn. I like selling with referrals. So if you have someone who have helped you into the next customer, for example, Stefan. If Stefan have given me a referral, I'm going to that referral and I will close the deal. Then I will tell the customer, Stefan bought this. What would you like? If I put Stefan in the closing sentence, he will make it much more possible for me to get the sale. Have you tried that, Bruce? Have you tried to put the referral up in the closing sentence?
I would say that 90% of my business comes from referrals. So they already know Stefan or somebody else has bought it and they've referred me to them. Yeah, it's really interesting. There was a survey done quite recently and 90% plus of the business directors or owners said they would be happy to give referrals, and yet only about 10% of salespeople ever ask for them.
Yes. Let's ask the listeners. Hur är det du som är med och lyssnar här, deltagare? Brukar du använda referrals? Om Bruce säger att 90% av alla kunder vill lämna referenser, brukar du fråga efter dem? Skriv in och berätta, är du snäll. Det här är väldigt, väldigt intressant. So let's see what they say. I asked them if they use referrals. So let's see what they say. Now we go for the silent close.
You should use the silent close at every stage throughout your sales process when you have asked a question. And the reason that you do that is because if you speak First, you've lost control of your sales process. You must wait for the answer. To give you one example of something that happened to me about 3 years ago, I'd been negotiating with a company on a very expensive sales training program, and the managing director was very happy, but he insisted that the sales director interviewed me first and he would have the final decision. So I'm sitting in this lovely plush office opposite the sales director, who's sitting behind his very smart desk. And we talked about the problems, we talked about my solutions. And then I asked him my initial closing question, which was, has everything I've said made perfect sense to you so far? And I shut up. And he just sat there. And I just sat there. And we looked at each other from time to time and smiled. And occasionally he looked at the clock on the wall and I looked at my watch, that's mirroring. And this went on for 17 minutes. That is a very long silent close. And then he said to me, he burst out laughing and he said, Bruce, I just wanted to see how long you could keep that up for. And I said, excellent. So will we be starting April or May? Silent close.
Yeah. Is that the longest silent close you have had?
That's, I think, the longest one I've ever had, yes.
Yes.
He was testing me.
Yes, of course. And compare this to most salespeople who think that 10 seconds is a very long time.
Well, think about it from a slightly different point of view. If somebody has not answered you yet, they're probably thinking. And it's just as rude to interrupt somebody when they are thinking as when they are speaking. So keep quiet until they respond.
Yeah, and there is an awful lot of things they need to think over. Do I like this guy? Do I have the money? Is the price right? Will someone kill me back home if I buy this? A lot of things to decide on very short time. So maybe 17 minutes isn't so bad at all.
You try it sometime. It seems like hours.
Of course it does. Let's see what the listeners say. Sometimes I ask for referrals, but I can always be better, Ola says. Lars says, sales with referrals is about the best thing there is. Ola got his 74% book yesterday and liked it. Perfect. Peter says, when you use the closes, you have to maybe think a little if it's cold calls or hot leads. And Helena asks this to put in the name, the personal, when you say Max, do you want to get through with this? Maybe it's harder in Sweden. But Helena, I'm not sure about that. I think maybe we can do that a little more, but it cannot be what we in Sweden call flåshurtigt. So we just say Bruce, 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 Bruce all the time. Then it's not a good thing. But to put
not all the time, but no. Definitely when you are asking the closing question.
Yes, brilliant. So, and then we have the 7th close, and it's the give away for free close. And what's that? Yeah, that's one thing that Bruce and I are doing. We have decided, maybe you already have seen it, to 200 people will get the 74% book and pay nothing more than the postage. Du kan alltså köpa den här boken för bara vad portot och emballaget kostar. Och varför gör vi det här? Jo, det är för att vi vill komma ut med det här. Vi tycker det här är bra sommarläsning till alla som säljer. Och vi tycker också att nu när det vi brukar kalla oss för Masters of Sales, när vi är på gång igen, det kommer komma mycket mer saker med oss framöver. Då vill vi verkligen bjuda på någonting till att börja med. Och jag vet att många redan har tagit vara på chansen och beställt sin bok. Men har du inte gjort det ännu så finns det mindre än 50 böcker kvar. Du får alltså reda på precis hur du gör för att inte vara en av dem som suger. Och det du gör är att du beställer den på www.soderpalm.online/vi-bjuder. Så där kan du gå in och beställa ditt friex av 74% av alla säljare suger. Det tycker jag att du ska göra. Sen ska jag också berätta här att nästa gång så kommer jag att ha jubileum här tillsammans med Christer Maxe. Vi ska ha release-webinar för hans nya bok Vinst. Och du ska få massor av tips för hur du skriver de bästa säljbreven, offerterna och inläggen. Och det här ska du inte missa, för att först lärde vi oss håll käften-rubriker förra gången. Nu ska vi lära oss att skriva resten också. Så är det med podden som gör dig glad. Du lär dig saker, du blir inspirerad och du har trevligt. Och till dig som var med, som lyssnar i efterhand på podden. Är det så att sidan ligger uppe fortfarande så går det att beställa 74% boken du också. Inga problem med det. Och jag vill också säga stort tack för att du lyssnar. Häng på podden som gör dig glad. Där kommer det alltid nya avsnitt hela tiden med bra grejer.